Sturm der Liebe is a German television soap opera created by Bea Schmidt for das Erste. It premiered on September 26, 2005. It follows in several interwoven plot threads stories about relationships taking place in the fictional five-star hotel Fürstenhof, located in Feldkirchen-Westerham near Rosenheim. The plot revolves around members of the family room area, the hotel owners, and employees. The series began production on August 1, 2005 and was originally broadcast beginning September 26, 2005 on weekdays at 15:10. In France, the series was broadcast from episode 1392 since April 2, 2013 on France 2 with the name of Le Tourbillon de l'Âme, and in Austria, the series was broadcast from episode 166 onwards since mid-July 2006 on ORF2. A summary of episodes 1 to 165 was broadcast as a pilot. Storm of Love has been licensed to 20 stations worldwide, and rights to all episodes were given to STV, LTV1, TV3, TV3 and RET4. RET4 broadcasts the series under the name Tempesta d'Amor. Nova TV in Bulgaria has broadcast the series since the end of July 2009 under a title translating as Winds of Love. Vita in Belgium broadcasts under the title Sturm der Liebe. Polish channel TV Puls broadcasts it under the title Bertse Ushwa, Finnish channel Sub under the title Lemon Viema Currency, and Icelandic channel Rashvi under the title Esterelda. Main characters: Werner once married Charlotte Saalfeld, heir to Fürstenhof. For many years he was director of the five-star hotels. After almost 40 years, he has also finally reconciled with his brother Andrew Copyright, and hires him as a cook to Fürstenhof. His habit of dating beautiful women has not changed. He has cheated on his wife Charlotte over and over again, which eventually led to divorce after 36 years of marriage. Charlotte Saalfeld is once again at Fürstenhof to attend a charity event and receive the Bavarian Order of Merit. In the end, she remains at Fürstenhof longer than expected. As a former practitioner of Saalfeld, Kabinian Nidaba 1/4 HL, along with his housekeeper Cosima Zastro appear at Fürstenhof and it is revealed that not Charlotte, but Cosima is the real Saalfeld. To Charlotte fights with Werner, because she writes over to Cosima their 30% of Fürstenhof shares. Charlotte was engaged for some time with Kabinian Nidaba 1/4 HL's son Michael. But when she realizes that Michael has feelings for Tanja, the mother of his child, she separates from him. Werner and Charlotte are now back as Fürstenhof's shareholders with 20 and 30%. Recently, they had by the acquittal of their common and Werner's arch-rival ex-wife Barbara of Heidenberg suffered a defeat, especially when Barbara returns as a woman on the side of Gar paragraph TZ Zastro to Fürstenhof. Since her daughter Miriam died at the birth of their daughter Valentina. They are with their granddaughter and the console their very busy now widowed son Robert, which they will be closer again. The harmony between Charlotte and Werner is getting better and Charlotte to one side as it is complicated by Cabal Barbara in a drug scandal. The flagship couple Alphonse and Hildegard Sundbichler have been employees of Fürstenhof for decades, she in the kitchen, and he is a very correct receptionist. Alfonso enjoys a special relationship of trust with the Saalfelds, not least because he had a relationship in teenage years with Charlotte Saalfeld and Alexander who is their son. Hildegard is involved in the local council and was a candidate for mayor. Their daughter is Marie Sundbichler, who however left the Fürstenhof. Andrew Copyright Konopka is the younger brother of Werner Saalfeld and reconciled at last, after many years with him. He works as a chef for him and his brother is now with help and advice. Furthermore, he is with Alfonso board member of the newly formed council at the court. His nephew, Robert has returned after the death of his wife Miriam to the hotel and acts as a second chef in addition to Andrew Copyright. Andrew Copyright's son Simon has now left with his wife, Mike to South Africa and works at the estate of his father with winemaker Jasper Steenkamp. Niels Heinemann arrives to Fürstenhof, to win back Marie Sundbichler, in whom he has fallen in love with at their former workplace Thlime. Since he has played badly but her It will take some time before Marie gets involved in it. The two argue again and again, and when Marie finally learns that Nils is married, they finally separated from him. Michael Fremden comes to the far one-quarter Fürstenhof to take over the practice of emigrants to Canada Evelyn Konopka. His father Corbinian was the unintentional accomplice of Ludwig Seelfeld, exchanged this as Charlotte and Cosima. Michael falls in love then calculated in Charlotte and plans to marry Evan. However, when Charlotte learns that Michael has a son named Fabian from Tanya Liberts, which is the product of a one-night stand from a forest festival, and Michael developed feelings for her, she separates from him. Michael also has a grown daughter, Debbie Williams, from a previous relationship with an American. Protagonists of previous seasons couples. Episodes 1 313, Laura and Alexander Seelfeld. They were central figures and the odds pair of the first season of the telenovela. Laura Mahler, dessert chef, and Alexander, eldest son of the Seelfelds and junior chef of the hotel, fall in love. Long they may not officially be together as a couple, because they think they are half-siblings, as Laura is the illegitimate daughter of Werner Seelfeld. Not until after a secret rendezvous of Laura and Alexander she becomes pregnant, breaking the silence of the insiders admitting that the two are not related because Alexander is not the biological son of Werner. Laura and Alex get married and move to Brussels, where Alexander works as a general manager post and Laura as Confiseurin. Shortly after Alexander returns to far one-quarter Fürstenhof, to deliver divorce papers for Werner and Charlotte. A few weeks later Laura and Alexander's daughter arrives to the world, Hannah Seelfeld. While Robert is in a coma, Alexander visits the family one more time. 2 years later, Laura comes to the far one-quarter Fürstenhof anniversary together with Robert for a visit. Episodes 314 520, Miriam and Robert Seelfeld. The story about this couple begins at the departure of Laura and Alexander, the center of the telenovela. Robert Seelfeld, the chef and co-owner of the hotel, is the younger son of Charlotte and Werner. Miriam of Heidenberg comes with her stepmother Barbara to the hotel far one-quarter Fürstenhof. Robert and Miriam fall in love with each other. But they find each other only after many detours. Miriam even married her former love Felix Tarasch along the way. But the love of Robert and Miriam is stronger and causes Miriam's marriage to fail. Miriam's hasn't obtained a proper divorce before the two are married, so they have to celebrate a symbolic wedding. Then they move to Paris, where Miriam takes a job as a perfumer and Robert opened a small restaurant. A year later, Miriam comes for a few days to far one-quarter Fürstenhof and obtains a divorce from Felix. Robert comes to visit the far one-quarter Fürstenhof anniversary together with Laura. Upon his departure, he announced that Miriam was expecting a daughter in the spring. 6 months later, Robert returned once more to the court, to testify in the trial of Barbara. When he travels back to Paris again, a tragedy happens. Miriam dies at birth of their daughter Valentina. Robert buried his beloved wife at the court and falls into deep mourning. Episodes 521 703, Samia and Dr. Gregor Bergmeister. After the departure of Miriam and Robert, Samia and Gregor become the center of the telenovela. Samia came illegally to Germany to hide from her domineering father and visit Charlotte Seelfeld, whose life she once saved. Over time, Samia and Gregor fell in love, but Gregor began a love affair with Leonie Prasinger, the half-cousin of Robert Seelfeld, which was only of short duration. Everything seemed to turn for good, until Joshua Boat, Samia's father, was murdered and the suspect fell to Gregor. After some time Samia started a love affair with Simon Konopka. At the altar, however, she realized that her feelings for Gregor were stronger. After a romantic wedding on a boat, the two start a new life in the direction of Africa. Episodes 704 914, Emma and Felix Seelfeld. After the departure of Gregor and Samia, the center of the telenovela was the story of Felix and Emma. Emma had fallen in love with Felix, who was restaurant manager, at their first meeting. Although the two had danced with each other in Gregor and Samia's wedding, Felix, however, fell head over heels in love with Emma's scheming half-sister, Rosalie. Emma hung on Felix a long time before she started a relationship with Ben Spanheim, and after some time the two decided to marry. However, after Ben's birth mother Barbara Heidenberg kidnapped and locked Felix and Emma in a power plant, Emma separated from Ben. Later Felix saw through Rosalie's intrigues and left her. Just as Emma and Felix had found each other, Rosalie lied about being pregnant. But her lie was soon discovered, and shortly thereafter Emma and Felix got married. At the wedding Rosalie was going to kill Emma, but didn't go through with it, because she realized that she loved her sister. Emma and Felix began a new life together in Canada with Felix's father, Johan. 3 months later a pregnant Emma and Felix came to Fürstenhof for a visit. After an investigation, it turned out that Emma was expecting twins. Another 6 months later, Emma delivered her 2 sons, Max and Moritz, to the world. Episodes 915 euro 1117, Sandra and Lucas Zastro . Just before the departure of Felix and Emma it came to light that Cosima Zastro, Kabinian Nidaba 1/4 HL's housekeeper, had been swapped at birth because of her heart failure with Charlotte Saalfeld and was thus real Saalfeld. Her son Lucas comes to Fürstenhof. There he meets his former classmate Annika Bruckner, who was the ugly duckling that became a beautiful swan. Lucas is entranced by her. A little later, but Annika is in a car accident because of Lucas. Lucas then meets at the hospital Sandra Ostermeier, who has heart failure and due to only live a few days. When she gets her heart transplants after Annika's death, Lucas sits by her bed and confesses his love for Annika. Sandra is deeply touched by his words. When she begins her rehabilitation at Fürstenhof, it turns out that she is the daughter of Werner Saalfeld. Sometime later, Lucas and Sandra get together, but separated again after many intrigues of Lucas' mother and Rosalie Engel. Lucas even married Rosalie, but separated again from her a few days later. He returns again back to Sandra. As Cosima committed a murder attempt on Rosalie and Lucas gives a false alibi, she threatens Sandra to leave the hotel place if she does not separate from Lucas. As it turns out that Sandra is pregnant with Lucas, can Cosima on air extortion. Nevertheless, Sandra loses the child soon after. The emergence of Lucas's father also provides quite a stir. After Lucas and Sandra have been buried by an avalanche, he fakes an abduction and attempted to extort Werner and Cosima, but fails. As Cosima blackmailed by the resurgent Rosalie with the attempted murder of her, she is at the end of her strength. She suffers a fatal heart attack and asks Lucas for forgiveness with her last words. Lucas and Sandra get married and go together to the giant mountains to the Czech Republic, to remodel an old monastery into an eco-hotel. Episodes 1118 euro 1391, Eva and Robert Saalfeld . Robert Saalfeld, who left 2.5 years earlier with his great love Miriam, to Paris, returns to Fürstenhof for the murder trial of Barbara Heidenberg. Also while in Paris, Robert experienced a tragedy. His wife Miriam, who was pregnant, died giving birth to their daughter Valentina. Only the nanny, Eva Krendlinger, can give him a little zest for life. Also, Eva has once lost her great love, Marcus Zastro, the eldest son of Cosima Saalfeld. He drowned 11 years ago in a sailing accident. Furthermore, Eva finds out that her biological father is really Gustl Moosberg, the half-brother of Alfonso Sunbuckler. Meanwhile, Eva has fallen in love with Robert during a joint trip to Verona and the two eventually end up together. But when Eva becomes pregnant, Robert gets scared that Eva will have the same destiny that Miriam had and breaks off the relationship. Then the supposedly dead, Mark Zastro comes to Fürstenhof. He was actually kidnapped by the mafia and after being captured for months, he managed to escape. Now he wants to win back Eva. However, Marcus spends a night with Barbara Heidenberg in a cabin in the woods. Ignorant of the fact that she is his father's wife and that encounter leads to her being pregnant. Not much sooner Eva realizes that she has lost the baby. Sometime later, Eva's feelings for Marcus are reawakened and she wants to marry him. Barbara is poisoned on this day, and loses her baby. Later, Eva acknowledges that she no longer loves Marcus and wants to separate from him, but he tells her that he has a deadly brain tumor. Eva decides to stay with Marcus until his condition is better. Marcus no longer believes that he can be saved and wants to marry before his death. Eva agrees, but just before saying their vows, he collapses and is rushed to an emergency surgery. Eva separates from Marcus shortly thereafter. After he had suicidal thoughts for a short time, he looks again optimistic about the future and travels to the island of Sylt. Robert and Eva were married shortly thereafter. During their wedding, Barbara blows up Fürstenhof. She escapes and supposedly dies on the run, after being wounded from the explosion. Fortunately, no one was killed by the explosion and Robert and Eva opened shortly afterwards a restaurant in Verona. Episodes 1392 €1600, Theresa Berger and Maurits van Noorden the architect Maurits van Noorden and the son of the ill-famed Doris van Noorden, who is planning a takeover of the struggling local brewery that is now in the hands of Theresa. When Maurits and Theresa meet, they succumb to the most potent brew of all, love. But before they can get to know each other better, an accident changes everything. Maurits's twin brother Constantin, a happy-go-lucky bon vivant, has returned to Germany. Upon meeting Maurits on a bridge, he pushes him into a river accidentally, but tries to search him. Failing to find his brother, Constantin leaves, thinking that Maurits had died from the fall. He then slips into the role of his brother, particularly savoring the budding relationship with Theresa. But Maurits is not dead, and unregistered trademark is not happy that Constantin has taken his life and fallen in love with Theresa. Episode 1601 1814, Marlene and Constantin Ridmer 1/4 layer the young music agent and accomplished pianist, Marlene Schweitzer, arrives at the far 1/4 Fürstenhof to help obtain a singing engagement there for her mother, Natascha Schweitzer. When her mother arrives at far 1/4 Fürstenhof, she falls in love with the same attractive man that Marlene already lost her heart to when they first met, the charming barkeeper Constantin Ridmer 1/4 layer. Marlene has had hardly any experiences with men, unlike her mother, who immediately throws herself into an affair with Constantin. Marlene has always stood in the shadow of her self-confident mother. Fortunately she finds a friend in the young chambermaid Mandy Meyer, who wants to help Marlene obtain greater self-confidence, and encourages her to be more feminine. It is after that when Marlene and Dr. Michael Niedarbor 1/4 HL fall in love with each other and get engaged. Marlene tries to forget ever being in love with Constantin and pursuing a life together with Michael. She and Constantin become best friends. Later on, in Natascha's and Constantin's relationship, they get engaged and Natascha becomes pregnant with Constantin's child. Shortly after, she has an abortion and lies to Constantin that she has lost the baby. Near the end, in their relationship Constantin distances himself from Natascha and cancels the wedding, when he realizes that he's really in love with Marlene. At first Marlene tries to stay with Michael, but when they kiss and end up sleeping together, she decides that Constantin is still her true love and breaks off her engagement with Michael. Cast protagonists couples current main characters current supporting actors former main actors former supporting actors celebrity guest performer Background: the Bavaria TV production GmbH produces the series since the summer of 2005 in the studios of Bavaria Film in Green Forest in Munich. Per day of shooting creates a complete sequence. Storm of Love is produced digitally, the external rotation, the images stored directly to disk, the interior rotation is recorded on a deck. The cameras are all connected directly by cable to the cut. Since episode 447 the series in widescreen format 16:9 is broadcast. Chief author of the series Peter Sweet is. A.D. D'Agito is responsible for editorial work, but also transfers it to the WDR and in part from the BR. Originally as a telenovela created with 100 episodes, Storm of Love has been extended several times. Meanwhile, in 1270 episodes planned. This feature of the genre of the finiteness of a soap opera was cancelled trend. Since all the other features for the characterization of a telenovela are Euro, and differentiation from other genres such as the soap opera Euro have been maintained despite the extensions, is One of Love Storm still one of the telenovelas. Each main plot arc of the series is dubbed by a female lead in the voiceover, a heritage from the original telenovela concept of an internal cohesion. This voiceover starring roles played Henriette Richter R. Paragraph HL, Inez G. David, Dominique Siasha, Ivanka Brotolo, Ute Katharina Kampowski, Sarah Stork, Uta Kargel, Heinz Lutz, Lucy Scherer, Liza Tzschirner, Jennifer Niewakala and Magdalena Steinlen. On January 26, 2010 was broadcast the episode 1000th. The anniversary was telenovela script comes with a big party and fireworks to 250 years far 1/4 Fürstenhof implemented. Following this episode was one of Sepp Schauer and Judith Hildebrand moderated, 50-minute anniversary special Storm of Love a Euro Happiness and Tears at the Court. Aired a special broadcast on ARD and ORF2. Bias equals, with each new season, a new header is assembled, which initiates the respective impacts and introduces the most important roles of the main season. Within the season if the bias is changed only slightly. Previous versions, Season 1, Henriette Richter R. Paragraph HL, Gregory B. Waldis, Dirk Galuba, Mona C. Fried, Claudia Wenzel, Lorenzo Patana. Copyright, Season 2, Inez G. David, Lorenzo Patana. Copyright, Dirk Galuba, Nicola Tigler, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Judith Hildebrandt, Season 3, Dominique Siasha, Christoph Arnold, Dirk Galuba, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Joachim La Currency TSCH and Caroline Bale, Anna Angelina Wolfers, Martin Gruber and Susan Oeck, Season 4, Ivanka Brotolo, Martin Gruber, Dirk Galuba, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Rena. Copyright Altmans and Joachim La Currency TSCH and Heike Trinker, Nicola Tigler, Natalie Allison, Susan Oeck, Season 5, Sarah Stork, Wolfgang Cerny, Dirk Galuba, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Mona C. Fried, Rena. Copyright Altmans and Joachim La Currency TSCH, Gabrielle Sklanitsky and Natalie Allison, Florian Stagela and Johannes Hauer, Season 6, Uta Kargel, Lorenzo Patana. Copyright, Mona C. Fried and Dirk Galuba, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Natalie Allison and Rena. Copyright Altmans and Joachim La Currency TSCH, Andreas Borcherding and Nicola Tigler, Florian Stagela and Johannes Hauer, Season 7, Heinz Lutz, Moritz Tittel and Daniel Farr. 1/4 Frock, Mona C. Fried and Dirk Galuba, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Natalie Allison and Joachim La Currency TSCH, Simone Richer, Eric Altenkopf and Judith Hildebrandt and Florian Stagela, Season 8, Lucy Scherer and Moritz Tittel, Melanie Wiegmann, Mona C. Fried and Dirk Galuba, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Simone Richer, Michelle Oliveri, Eric Altenkopf and Joachim La Currency TSCH, Jan van Weyden and Florian Stagela, Season 9, Liza Tzschirner, Christian Feist, Mona C. Fried and Dirk Galuba, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Nadine Wormuth and Dietrich Adam, Eric Altenkopf and Melanie Wiegmann and Joachim La Currency TSCH, Sarah Elena Timp and Florian Stagela and David Perila, Season 10, Jennifer Niewakala, Jan Hartmann, Dirk Galuba and Mona C. Fried and Dietrich Adam, Ange Hargon and Sepp Schauer, Nadine Wormuth and Kai Albrecht, Eric Altenkopf and Melanie Wiegmann and Joachim La Currency TSCH, Kristin Baloff and Florian Stagela, Season 11, Magdalena Steinlen, Kai Albrecht, Dirk Galuba and Mona C. Fried and Dietrich Adam, Ange Targan and Sepp Schauer, Isabella Haar. 1/4 BNER and Michael Kiel, Eric Altenkopf and Melanie Wiegmann and Joachim La Currency TSCH, Kristin Baloff and Florian Stagela. Page sequence 161, the actor and the title are called alphabetically. Outdoor locations the exterior design for the fiction E-Hotel Far 1/4 Fürstenhof is a private castle in the Upper Bavarian village of Agen. The shooting is basically for the public is not accessible. On the site of Bavaria Film GmbH in Green Forest Geiselgasteig in addition, a villa in the Bavaria Film City. Since March 2006, filmed for the renovated west-winged Prince's Court. For this, the facade of the Villa Man was used in 2000 as a backdrop for the historical drama The Man's Novel of a Century was built. Modeled after the original gate was renovated and rebuilt. This setting is played from the inside. In difficult weather conditions during the winter months because of the proximity to the studio, shot mostly here. Between the scenes of the soap opera landscape studies are recorded, which are adapted to the seasonal flow. The recordings are from the foothills of the Alps. Between these scenes alternate and separate the individual scenes in the plot. In episode 1193 to 1195 have Robert Saalfeld, Eva Krendlinger, Hildegard Sundbickler and husband Alfonso 3 days in Verona, northern Italy spent. The German actor spoke in the scenes in German and their Italian colleagues Celine Gandini, Fabio Mazzari and Enrico Mutti responded in their language. In the latter post-production were synchronized. Music equals, each pair of protagonists in Storm of Love has a common love song that unites them. In the first season at Laura and Alexander, this was Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. Alexander's rival with Laura Gregory had the song Stand By Me by Ben E. King. In the second season, which intensively studied with the love life of Robert and Miriam, was the song of the two Your Song by Elton John. During the season Miriam was married to Felix Tarash. Their common song was Total Eclipse of the Heart in the sung version of Glee. The love song from the third season with Greg and Samia was I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston, which is already on the soundtrack for the film The Bodyguard was used. The love story of Emma and Felix was accompanied with the song Moon River by Barbra Streisand. Sandra and Luke, the pair connects the fifth season, the song Without You by Harry Nilsson. The love song of the lovers Eva and Robert, When You Say Nothing at All by Ronan Keating. Teresa and Moritz, Billy Joel a Euro Honesty, Teresa and Konstantin, Billy Joel a Euro Just the Way You Are, Marlene and Konstantin, Elvis Presley a Euro Can't Help Falling in Love, Pauline and Leonard, Lee Hazelwood and Nancy Sinatra a Euro Summer Wine, Julia and Niklas, Debbie Boone a Euro You Light Up My Life, Louisa and Sebastian, Elvis Presley a Euro Always on My Mind. Director, always 5 episodes will be produced in a block of 5 days. On each block work 2 directors who are responsible for studio shooting, the other for the parallel emerging field recording. Audience share and audience reach equals, in the first 6 months, the market share steadily to over 20% at most about 3 million viewers. The target audience of 14 to 49-year-olds regularly reaches an audience of over 10%, 28, but there were episodes with much longer range. Regularly seek the ARD telenovela Sturm der Liebe market shares of more than 25% of the public for 3 years from a The place in the top 5 of the public service program is the production of the Bavaria film Therefore Safe. A quote meters some standard internal records, edit September 26, 2005, episode 1, it reached 1.04 million viewers, an audience rating of 10.3%. April 3, 2006, episode 121, the audience rises to over 25%. August 6, 2007, episode 432, the most successful, and September 2009, following 3.03 million viewers, a market share of 32.0%. February 1, 2008, episode 544. 3.21 million viewers with an audience share of 25.1%, 11.5% of the young target group. September 14, 2009, episode 914, the most successful result with 3.28 million viewers, a market share of 27.9%. January 26, 2010, 1000 episode, the anniversary saw 3.13 million viewers, which is a market share of 24.1%. The special Storm of Love a Happiness and Tears at the Court saw 2.2 million viewers, market share 15.2%. The best value in its third season was 29.7% market share, 3.44 million viewers. The range record set in season 2 there were only 3.95 million viewers. The peak labeled equals repetition and transmission blocks equals, the episodes are broadcast on a fixed channel position of the ARD. All third-party programs repeat the series in the morning program on the following day. In addition, there is a repeat in the night. As part of the internet in the last episodes of ARD Library will be available. For the curious, there are on the website of the ARD a synopsis and a cast list for 4 weeks in advance. The HRTV, the first episodes of the telenovela was repeated, but decided the third programs to repeat only new episodes, since Storm of Love alone is a trademark of ARD. ORF has bought the serial rights and repeated the following morning on each ORF2. Pocket folders in January 2007, published monthly in the Pocket Guide series publisher Cora Storm of Love. Here are written by Johanna Thieden of the Scripts Be Rejected novels. As the title pictures stills from the TV series are used. As of July 2006 saw the Storm of Love a Euro photo story. The first volume came as a photo book, the romantic love story of Laura and Alexander to be reprinted. The second edition was issued in August 2008, and showed the stars of the series in exciting scenes. Are complemented by background information on the novel series. The series is published once a year. The author remains anonymous. Prizes and awards, 2010, German TV Award 2010 in the category Best Daily Series. 2009, Enfantag Sepp Schauer received the Fan Award on the grounds of Bavaria. 2008, Premio Napoli Classic for Cultural and Martin Gruber's Susan Oeck as Victoria and Felix Tarasch. 2007, Premio Napoli Cultural Classic for Lorenzo Patana copyright as Robert Saalfeld. 2007, Smoke-Free Seal for Storm of Love because of the deliberate decision on smoking characters. International broadcast. External links, Storm of Love spoiler. References